Most people expect love to look obvious. Constant attention, grand gestures, heartfelt declarations. But if you're with a dismissive avoidant, love rarely shows up that way. Intimacy can feel risky to them, so their care comes quietly in ways you might overlook. In this video, we'll explore 9 subtle but meaningful signs a dismissive avoidant loves you, explain the psychology behind each, and show how to recognise love even when it doesn't look like a fairy tale. Hello, and welcome to The Love Edit, a space where we explore the psychology behind attraction, connection, and attachment, and make sense of the patterns that shape how we love. Today's video looks at the strongest signs that a dismissive avoidant loves you. But before we get into the signs themselves, there's something important we need to understand. Dismissive avoidants often do love deeply. They just don't express it in the ways that most people expect. And without understanding why, it's very easy to miss the signals, misread the behaviour, or assume a lack of feeling where there isn't one. So what actually creates dismissive avoidant attachment, and why does love look so different through this lens? To understand dismissive avoidant attachment, we need to go back to where attachment patterns begin. Attachment theory was introduced by British psychologist John Bowlby, who described attachment as a lasting psychological connection between human beings. His work emerged from observing the intense distress children experienced when separated from their primary caregivers. What Bowlby recognised was simple but profound. Humans are biologically wired to seek closeness, safety, and emotional responsiveness from the people they depend on. In early life, children form internal expectations about connection based on how consistently their emotional needs are met. When care is emotionally available, responsive, and predictable, the nervous system learns that closeness is safe. This becomes the foundation of secure attachment. In the 1970s, psychologist Mary Ainsworth expanded on Bowlby's work through her famous Strange Situation study. By observing how infants reacted to separation and reunion with their caregivers, she identified distinct attachment patterns based on the child's emotional responses. From this research came 3 original attachment styles: secure attachment, anxious attachment, and avoidant attachment. Later, researchers Main and Solomon identified a 4th pattern, disorganized attachment, now commonly referred to as fearful avoidant attachment. So what does this mean in practice? It means that the way a child learns to manage closeness doesn't just disappear as they grow up. These patterns become embedded at a nervous system level and quietly shape how intimacy feels in adulthood, including in romantic relationships. Dismissive avoidant attachment tends to develop when a child repeatedly learns that emotional needs are met inconsistently, dismissed, minimized, or discouraged. This doesn't always involve obvious abuse or neglect. Often it comes from subtler patterns: caregivers who are physically present but emotionally unavailable, uncomfortable with vulnerability, or reinforcing self-reliance over emotional expression. Over time, the child adapts. They learn that depending on others doesn't feel safe. They suppress attachment needs. They become highly self-sufficient. From the outside, avoidant children often appear independent and unaffected. Internally, however, their nervous system has learned to associate closeness with discomfort or threat. As adults, many dismissive avoidants have a chronically activated sympathetic nervous system, meaning they're often operating in a state of low-level vigilance. Think of them like a deer, alert, cautious, and constantly scanning for emotional risk. This makes emotional closeness complicated, not unwanted, but activating, uncomfortable. When a dismissive avoidant loves someone, their nervous system is constantly balancing two opposing forces: the desire for connection and the instinct to protect autonomy and emotional safety at all costs. That's why their expressions of love are often subtle, indirect, or inconsistent, not because they don't care, but because closeness itself triggers internal conflict. In this video, we're going to look at the real behaviours that signal love within this attachment style, and the psychological reasons behind them, precisely because dismissive avoidants don't express love in the conventional storybook ways most people expect. A dismissive avoidant's default instinct is solitude. Independence feels regulating. Closeness, by contrast, can activate early nervous system defences learned long ago, where vulnerability felt unsafe and emotional reliance felt risky. So when a dismissive avoidant makes time for you, it isn't casual, it's deliberate. You may notice it in subtle, contained ways, such as planning time together without making a big emotional show of it, responding to messages even during busy or stressful periods, showing up for moments that matter to you, even if they don't talk much about it. This matters because they are actively overriding their instinct to retreat. In attachment psychology, dismissive avoidants rely on deactivating strategies, behaviours that reduce closeness to maintain emotional control. And choosing consistency with you means resisting those default patterns. For someone whose nervous system defaults to independence as safety, choosing you repeatedly is a clear signal of emotional prioritization. If they check in without prompting, or they follow through on plans even when life feels overwhelming, it may look minimal on the surface, but internally it requires regulation and intention on their part. Think about someone in your life. When have they consistently shown up for you, even when it would have been easier to withdraw? Dismissive avoidant attachment rarely expresses care through overt emotional displays. Big declarations, constant reassurance, or expressive vulnerability can feel exposing rather than bonding. Instead, care is often shown through practical, low-drama actions. You might notice it in things like fixing something for you without making a point of it, remembering how you take your coffee, sending information that might help you, or quietly making your life easier in small ways. These gestures are easy to dismiss because they don't look emotional, but psychologically they serve a very specific function. Dismissive avoidants tend to express attachment through instrumental caregiving, a pattern where care is demonstrated through action rather than emotional disclosure. This allows them to stay connected without activating the vulnerability that emotional expression demands. From a nervous system perspective, this is a form of regulated proximity. They can be close without feeling engulfed. So when they consistently do small, thoughtful things for you, they're not being distant, they're managing closeness in a way that feels safe to their nervous system. If they remember details you've mentioned in passing, take care of practical needs, or show up in quiet, consistent ways, those are attachment-driven behaviours. They require attention, emotional tracking, and intention, even if they're not wrapped in sentimentality. And because dismissive avoidants don't typically announce their care, these signs are often overlooked or undervalued. But in context, they matter. Has someone ever shown care for you in ways that were easy to miss simply because they weren't emotional or dramatic? For a dismissive avoidant, opening up their routines, habits, and personal space is a significant gesture. Independence and self-sufficiency are core to their nervous system's sense of safety, often learned in childhood environments where closeness was inconsistent, unpredictable, or uncomfortable. Inviting someone into their private world signals trust and a willingness to connect, even if it doesn't look like traditional intimacy. You might notice this in ways such as letting you into their home or personal spaces, introducing you to close friends or family, bringing you to places that hold personal meaning, or including you in decisions about their daily life, habits, or routines. These actions are subtle, but they are emotionally significant. They demonstrate what psychologists call instrumental attachment behaviour, showing closeness through shared life and practical inclusion rather than through overt emotional displays. From a nervous system perspective, this is another form of regulated proximity. They are letting you in while maintaining a sense of control that keeps closeness manageable. If they invite you to a Saturday ritual that they follow every week, maybe a morning run, a coffee spot, or a regular meet-up with friends, it's not framed as a romantic event, but for someone who usually guards their private world, it's a clear form of emotional investment. Think for a moment, has someone ever allowed you into their routines or personal life in a way that felt meaningful, even if they didn't express it through words or emotion? Dismissive avoidants may struggle with verbal emotional talk, but their brains are paying attention, really paying attention. When they remember what matters to you, your favourite snack, how you take your coffee, the song that makes you smile, it shows that they're encoding your emotional world into their own. That isn't casual observation, it's care. Psychologically, this reflects a deep level of attunement. Even if they don't verbalise affection, their nervous system recognises your significance. They're forming neural patterns that tie your preferences, your routines, and your likes to their sense of safety and connection. In attachment terms, this is a form of relational encoding. They're tracking your world because it matters to them. If hours or even days later they bring up a detail you mentioned in passing, it's not performance, it's memory in action. And in attachment science, memory is one of the ways bonds are strengthened. It might look small on the surface, remembering a coffee order or a little anecdote, but for someone who usually guards their emotions, it's a quiet but profound signal that you are significant and your inner world matters to them. Has someone ever remembered a tiny detail about you that seemed insignificant at the time, but made you feel truly seen? That's often their way of showing love. Dismissive avoidants often show love through action rather than words, and one of the clearest signs is protection, but it's subtle. This isn't about dramatic gestures or sweeping heroics. It's about small, intentional acts that keep you safe or make life easier. Psychologically, this comes from their nervous system's dual drive, a desire for closeness mixed with a strong need to maintain autonomy. Protecting you is a way to invest in the relationship without feeling emotionally flooded. It's instrumental caregiving in action, a practical form of love. You might notice it as giving advice that helps you avoid unnecessary stress, looking out for your well-being without announcing it, or intervening quietly when they see a potential problem or harm. These behaviours aren't performative. They don't seek recognition or gratitude. Internally, it requires effort to override their instinct to remain detached and self-contained. By acting in these ways, they're managing closeness safely while still showing attachment-driven care. If they take steps to make your life smoother, watch out for problems before they arise, or quietly support you in ways that don't draw attention. These are love signals that are easy to miss. Think about someone in your life. Have they ever gone out of their way in ways you might not have noticed at first, simply to make things safer or easier for you? Dismissive avoidants tend to avoid direct emotional talk, not because they don't care, but because vulnerability feels risky. Their nervous system is wired to protect autonomy, so overt declarations of feeling can feel activating or overwhelming. Instead, they communicate in subtle or indirect ways. This could look like sending a message to check in without explicitly saying, "I care," or "I miss you." Sharing information or articles that remind them of you. Making small gestures that signal consideration rather than emotion. Psychologically, this is a way of staying connected without triggering anxiety or emotional flooding. It allows them to signal attention and thoughtfulness while still maintaining the sense of safety their nervous system craves. For example, they might drop you a note about a meeting you mentioned you were nervous about, or send a song that reminded them of a conversation you had. It's communication, but filtered through a lens of safety. These indirect signals can be confusing if you're expecting overt expressions of love. It's rare for avoidants to regularly say, "I love you." Some may never say it at all. The key is understanding that for a dismissive avoidant, action often speaks louder than words. Can you think of a time someone cared for you in ways that weren't verbal or obvious, but still mattered deeply? That's often how a dismissive avoidant shows attention and connection. For dismissive avoidants, physical closeness is carefully regulated. Their nervous system is wired to protect autonomy, so affection often appears where it feels safe, rather than where convention expects it. This can look like brief hand-holding when you're both relaxed on the couch, a quiet hug after a long day, or sitting close without prolonged contact. Interestingly, the closer they feel emotionally, the more cautious they can become with touch. Some avoidants may be comfortable with casual sexual contact, where there's little emotional vulnerability. But when genuine feelings develop, physical intimacy can become triggering. Even small gestures, a hug, a hand on your arm, may require conscious effort because closeness now carries emotional stakes. Psychologically, this is calibrated intimacy, a form of regulated, intentional affection. Their nervous system is balancing the desire to connect with the need for safety and independence. It's not ambivalence or a lack of feeling. It's attachment-driven care being expressed in a way that protects them from emotional overwhelm. So when you notice them showing affection in these small, controlled ways, it's meaningful. They are navigating the tension between closeness and their instinct to withdraw, actively choosing connection, even if it doesn't look dramatic. For a dismissive avoidant, showing vulnerability is like stepping into uncharted and unsafe territory. Their nervous system is wired to guard emotional exposure, so letting someone glimpse their softer, uncertain side is rare and deeply meaningful. These moments might appear in small, almost fleeting ways, such as opening up about childhood, admitting to stress or anxiety, sharing a personal struggle or disappointment, talking about a fear they rarely voice, letting their guard down briefly in conversation, or revealing something they seldom tell others. Avoidants aren't reckless with disclosure. They assess safety constantly. Allowing glimpses of their inner world is an active choice, a controlled opening, that signals trust and attachment. It's care, expressed through careful exposure. They might casually mention that a particular childhood memory still affects them, or confide in you about a difficult decision at work. These aren't grand declarations, they're signals that they are including you in their internal world, even if just a little at a time. Has anyone in your life ever shared something personal, maybe just a brief glimpse of their inner world, and it felt like a sign that they really trusted you? That's often how a dismissive avoidant will show you that they love you. Dismissive avoidants may not declare commitment or make grand proclamations, but their prioritization speaks volumes. All the patterns we've explored, remembering small details, sharing parts of their world, offering regulated affection, protecting you quietly, and letting you glimpse their vulnerabilities. These all point to one central truth. They choose you in ways that align with their internal safety map. This is attachment in action. Their nervous system has to balance closeness with the instinct to protect themselves. So every decision to prioritize you is an active, regulated choice. It may not look dramatic, but it's consistent, intentional, and deeply meaningful. You might notice it in small ways, such as adjusting their routines to be present, putting effort into actions that matter to you, or being there when others would retreat. For someone wired to maintain distance, these acts of prioritization require real emotional tracking and regulation. Which of these patterns, showing up, remembering details, sharing their world, or protecting you quietly, feel most familiar in your own experience? Seeing these patterns through the lens of attachment changes everything. Dismissive avoidants don't usually show love in fireworks, declarations, or dramatic gestures. They show love through a filter, subtle, measured actions that might not feel vivid at first, but once you know what to look for, the full picture comes into focus. They make time, remember details, include you in their world, regulate affection, protect you. These are real signs of love, even if they don't match the rom-com script that we expect. Hit subscribe to The Love Edit for more psychology-led insights into attraction, connection, and attachment. And remember, when it comes to love and relationships, The Love Edit is designed to help you stop guessing and start knowing.